All right, bringing us to this evening and our theme, Marty's women shatter the glass ceiling. Marty vroue verpletter die glasplafon. Dit is ons tema. Vrouedag is natuurlik komende Dinsdag die 9de, maar ons hou vanaand so 'n bietjie van 'n pre-party met ons eie alumni waarmee ons lekker kan brag en wat 'n debat vir ons gaan open rondom hierdie tema van Marty vrouens wat die glasplafon verpletter en breek en uitskiet boontoe dat die skerwe spat.
I obviously come from a very different dimension, and my work's really been a life's work. And as a kid, I used to always be challenged by how quickly can I move my eyes, how quickly can I judge, how accurate can I be. And it's really, as a young kid, I always did that, just out of my own. And then I started playing hockey and played for South Africa, and for some of the years we were isolated. So I went overseas, and because I always wanted to measure my skills against other players in the world, not knowing that we were going to get back into international sport. And in going overseas, people always asked, how did you see that? You know, those old cliches, do you have eyes in the back of your head? How did you do that, etc. And then I just always thought that everyone saw what I saw on the field, and as I moved around in life. We got back into international sport, and I played a couple of tests for South Africa. And in playing, all the coaches and players I played against asked me the same questions. And then I realized, well, maybe there is something out there, and started exploring it up until one day when I realized I do see differently to other people. And then I actually stopped playing hockey, stopped playing South Africa, and started my research, because I believe that if you really want to prove something, you've got to first research it and then prove it on the field. So I stopped everything, did my research, showed that if you train your eyes in a certain way and you train on the field in a certain way, that you can impact performance. So it's really been a life's work. And for me, in my field, starting a whole new science as a woman is really tough, because new science is already hard to convince people. And then, of course, in the field that I move in, it's mainly sport, and it's mainly male-dominated. So one of the first teams I worked with back in '97 was the Pakistan cricket team. Now, you can imagine that was quite daunting for me, going to Pakistan to work with these guys. First of all, in the stadium where we played, there were no women. And being a woman in that team was just unheard of. So that was quite challenging for me. And then I always say some of the stuff I've seen and experienced will definitely go to the grave with me, because I couldn't tell anyone about it. But one evening while working with Pakistan, there was a knock on my door, and the rest will go to the grave with me. But I was offered a bribe, and that was one of the first teams that I worked with. So being a woman in that environment was quite a challenge. But I think knowing what I do, being professional, having good basic Christian principles is what takes me through all of that. And so big challenges in a very male-dominated field.
Okay, ek het nie geweet ek is deur die glass ceiling tot die universiteit my nou gebel het. Okay, wat my gemotiveer het, ek is 'n Taurus en ons is hardkoppig. En as iemand vir my sê jy kan dit nie doen nie, dan wil ek hulle wys. En dis hoekom ek gekom het waar ek is. Ek het nog altyd 'n wil gehad om suksesvol te wees, en ek het aansoek gedoen by Silver Bars vir my articles. Hulle het gesê nee. Ek het toe eers maar gaan aankla en elke jaar aansoek gedoen by hulle, tot ek dink hulle moedeloos geraak het en sê kom doen maar jy nou jou articles. Eendag het ek gesit en een van die direkteure het vir my gesê, hulle almal was wit blanke mans wat die direkteure was, en hy het vir my gesê geen vrou sal 'n direkteur van hierdie company word, soos jy moet maar die reality face hierso. En toe besluit ek maar dan begin ek my eie company. En in 1995 het my eie company begin. En dieselfde rede basies hoekom ek Be Empowered begin het, ek het bietjie moedeloos geraak met bietjie bored geraak met lewe na omtrent 10 jaar. En toe het ek het iemand, die eienaar van Nera, vir my gesê, kyk jy so face na reality. Jy's blank en 'n vroumens. Daar is geen manier hoe jy 'n BE company kan begin in Suid-Afrika nie. En dis al wat ek nodig gehad het, en vandag het ek 'n BE writing agency. Soos dit is maar net, jy weet, hulle daarmee is en dan gaan jy daarvoor. Die obstacles wat ek gehad het, was basies om ernstig opgeneem te word. Ek kan onthou met my labelot, toe was al groot stryk op een van hierdie boere se plase. Hy was 'n bekende rugby speler. En al sy koeie was about om cystitis te kry en hier kom ek aan met die hoekskoene, alles, ek gaan nou hierdie stryk vir hom uitsort. En hy sê vir my, hoor so, terwyl jy in ons wag vir jou baas, gaan wag daar in die kombuis met die vroumense, ons is nou by jou. En toe sê ek vir hom, kyk hierso, ek gaan nou jou stryk vir jou uitsort, jou koeie moet gemelk word. En daar het ek begin. En toe ek nou en veral om ernstig opgevat te word as jy hoog pregnant aankom by 'n stryk en dis net swart mans om jou en jy weet hoe hulle voel oor vroumense, maar jy weet jy doen jou ding en dan op die ou end as jy jouself bewys het, dan begin die mense jou ernstig opneem. En dis basies die obstacles wat ek gehad het.
Thank you, Linda. Goeienaand, dames en die enkele menere wat nog hier is. Linda, ek kom van 'n baie klein dorpie en julle sal dit dalk verblydend vind dat dit 'n vrou was wat vir my 'n voorliefde vir ekonomie geleer het en in my kop die saadjie geplant het dat 'n mens dalk universiteit toe kan gaan om 'n ekonoom te word. En daar het ek my grootste struikelblok raakgeloop want die argumente wat mense aangevoer het was, maar jy is dan 'n vrou, kort voor lank gaan jy trou en babas hê en dan is die geld vir universiteit gemors. En ek kom uit 'n gesin van 6, baie arm gesin van 6 en dit was 'n geldige argument vir my ouers om te oorweeg. Gelukkig vir my en hopelik vir my studente het my pa geglo dat ek suksesvol sou wees as hy my ondersteun om universiteit toe te gaan. En ons het almal as gesin, alle kinders het vakansies gewerk. Ek het op universiteit deeltydse pos gehad. Ek het nog 'n namiddag werkie gehad om geld te verdien. Die punt daarvan is dat deursettingsvermoë aanhou en vasbyt op die ou en tog uitwerk. En dit is hoekom ek so 'n passie het vir die leerders wat in die Rachel's Angels program is. Hulle is meerendeels leerders wat kom uit moeilike sosio-ekonomiese omstandighede, vir wie universiteit iets daar ver aan die eindpunt van 'n teleskoop is. En dit is daarom dat ek my tyd daarin bestee en ek is seker Elsabeth gaan vir my later 'n bietjie meer spesifieke vrae daaroor vra, so ek gaan volstaan met hierdie mond vol.
Thank you, Elsabeth. I also come from a small dorpie in Springs on the East Rand in Johannesburg. And I think it's precisely because of coming from that kind of environment where I was told, especially under the apartheid system, of course, that really the best that I could be was somebody who thrives within the environment of Springs or the township of Guatemala where I grew up. But just like Lizette, the best way to get me to do something is by telling me that I cannot do it. And so when I was told that the world was not for me to conquer, I didn't quite believe it. I kind of thought there has to be something bigger than this. And there I have to credit my parents who, despite not having had a university education themselves, invested everything that they had in my education as well as the education of my sisters, not just financially, but also in terms of taking us out of South Africa to visit neighboring countries, get a better sense of the world beyond our own immediate environment, and also making us believe that universities were within our reach. So although there were no universities in the township, they would take us outside during the day when we were allowed to still be in a suburb or whatever the case was, show us the University of Pretoria. When we came to Cape Town, showed us the University of Cape Town, brought it that much closer to us so that they demystify the whole idea of what a university is and who belongs in a university. So I credit them for that particular motivation in my life. But in terms of the challenges and stumbling blocks that I faced, I think there are two. There are external challenges and there are internal challenges. I think externally, the field of international relations, foreign policy is very male-dominated. Yes, we might have had female foreign ministers, but if you go behind the scenes, it's a very male-dominated environment. You need only look at the UN Security Council right now and the decisions that are being taken there and who's taking the decisions at the highest body that can cause war in the world. And so obviously that was a challenge for me coming into this field. All my lecturers that I ever had, except for perhaps one female in the field, were male, and they were predominantly white. I only had one black lecturer, so there I was black, I was female, I was young, and I didn't have very many people who looked or sounded like me in my environment. But what helped me overcome that was a realization that despite not having very many women who are like me in the field, my support base came from precisely those people who didn't look like me. So I had a lot of white male individuals supporting me and assisting me to go through. I had a lot of white females who supported me and helped me go through. I had a lot of blacks and so on. And so I began to think to myself, well, perhaps it isn't just about color and just about race. There must be something deeper, which then brings me to the individual. I had to then realize that despite the external constraints, I could be my biggest constraint. If I begin to internalize all the external constraints of being black, female, and everything else, that probably is exactly where I'm going to end. So I've had to work through, and it's a constant struggle. At times, yes, you do have situations where you say, well, is this because I'm female, or is it because I'm black, or whatever? But in the end, as I say, I am the only one who can liberate myself from it, and that has been the quickest way to help myself come out of those stumbling blocks.
My name is Sipokazi. I am working for the Security Institute for Governance and Leadership in Africa, abbreviated as SIGLA, which is one of the HOPE projects. I've been with Stellenbosch now for just a month. Having listened to the contributions that have been made here, I'm not going to ask questions because the people that spoke before me have asked these questions, but I just want to alert us as women to just two things. I think it is important to know that we always have to deal with issues from a point of a frame of reference. I think it is quite important to remember that a frame of reference is always important. And I would not like us as women to see ourselves as victims. And this is one of the things that in the institution that I'm getting into now, we're trying to encourage that Africa should not see itself as a victim, because the moment you see yourself as a victim, it disempowers you to go anywhere or even to try to go anywhere. The stereotypes that we are having in South Africa, unfortunately, we're going to have them for a longer time than we ever think. You will always be judged by being a woman. You'll always be judged by being black. And there's always been an attachment to how people perceive you, what limitations people put in front of you. Actually, my background is oceanography and mathematics. The time when I did oceanography in this country, I was literally the only black person that was doing oceanography in this country, the time I was registered for oceanography. Now, limitations will always be there, and these are going to take time to eradicate. However, it is shorter to change your world when you use a point of reference that comes from within you. So it's very important that we start seeing ourselves as women from the perspective of who we are and what we can do. Seated in this room, I am definitely sure if we were to get a story out of each and every woman that is seated here, including the panelists here, I'm definitely sure that each and every one of us can find something that you can allude to yourself as an achievement, no matter how small it is. And I think we need to start small, to see those smaller things in our lives and ourselves that we can do, and capitalize on those things. Because by so doing, we will shatter this ceiling, this glass ceiling, quicker than when we expect from the externals to provide us opportunities, to give us, to afford this and that, and having to prove ourselves. Once you have a proof, an endorsement, and a surety from within yourself, I promise you anything is possible.